gentlemen, thank you for tuning in to the pre-party. I'm your host, JCal, and this is a presentation of Alliance-Wrestling.com, your number one source for news and information for the National Wrestling Alliance. Like I said, I'm JCal, and today's a special day, ladies and gentlemen. Today, we are celebrating the birthday of one Jax Dane. That's right, Jax Dane. This gentleman right here. Well, some of you guys can't see that. We are tri-casting right now. Or technically maybe forecasting. I don't know how to say it, but I've got Twitch TV streaming onto my left. To my right, we have Instagram Live. And of course, we're here on YouTube. And again, that's where places you can follow the Alliance at TheAllianceBlog on Twitch, YouTube, TikTok, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. We're everywhere, guys, or at least we're trying to be. We're even on Tumblr, if that's still a thing. I just want to say, again, thanks, guys, for all the positive thoughts and comments. Last week was a struggle, but everyone's okay and everyone's good. And that's really all we need to talk about. But Jax bleeping Dane, it's his birthday today, so I want to give a little bit of love to the man known as Godzilla. And I want to talk about the former NWA World's Heavyweight Champion. Now, I believe it's going to be on next week's NWA POWERRR. We're going to see Jax Dane reignite his feud with Tim Storm. And I do mean reignite because, well, these two gentlemen have a storied past, and it's kind of fitting that on the wall they just so happen to be right above one another. Now, if you're on Instagram, you don't see that, and if you're on Twitch, you might see that. I don't know. But I do want to bring up a couple of things about our man Jax Dane. Now, first and foremost, if you guys go to our Anchor channel or Spotify or really any of those, any places you can find the JCal's podcast, we recently upped an episode from 2013 where my man DKM, Jaden, and I spoke to Jax Dane. And now this was before he became NWA World's Heavyweight Champion. And you can give that a listen again. If you go to our Instagram stories, there's a link there. And soon there will be a link on Facebook and Twitter and everywhere else. But make sure to check that out if you're a fan of Jax Dane. It's certainly worth a listen. Now the native of Bakewell, Tennessee, Jax Dane is one of the unsung heroes of the National Wrestling Alliance during that Bruce Tharpe era. There wasn't a whole lot to celebrate during those days, but of course Rob Conway and Jax Dane were two of the bright spots, at least in my opinion. Dane was well, he was originally a tag team wrestler, teaming with Raymond Rowe. Now, some of you guys who watch WWE programming know Raymond Rowe as Eric from the Viking Raiders or the Viking Experience or whatever they're being called this week. And him and Rowe were actually a pretty lethal combination, and they were the NWA Lone Star Tag Team titles. In fact, get used to that phrase, NWA Lone Star, because a lot of Jax Dane's early history with the NWA was in the Southwest region, exclusively to Texas. That includes NWA Houston, NWA Lone Star, NWA Branded Outlaw Wrestling, NWA Texoma, so on and so forth. Anyways, Dane was one of the few guys to actually unify the heavyweight championships in Texas. So at one point he was the NWA State of Texas champion. He was the NWA Texoma champion. The NWA Lone Star champion, as well as the NWA Branded Outlaw champion. He held those three titles simultaneously. Around the time that he lost those titles, in fact, the podcast goes into detail how he lost the titles of champion to Byron Wilcott and James Claxton, the Cowboy. Right around this time, Jax was actually scheduled to get a title match against the then champion Cahagas. Now, Cahagas was the first crowned world champion in the Bruce Tharpe era. After Adam Pearce and Colt Cabana left the title in Australia, they both vacated their claim to the championship. It was in Glassboro. It was in New Jersey. It was in actually a friend of the website, NWA Dog, or now they're just Dangerous Adrenaline Wrestling Gladiators. Good friends to the show, good friends to the podcast. They've always helped put us over. That they crowned the first post Adam Pearce NWA World Champion, and that was the Tokyo Monster Cahagas. Now Cahagas had won the title, and he was making his defenses around the world, even defended in the Dominican Republic, the last NWA World Champion to defend in the Dominican. He was scheduled to face Jax Dane, but due to injury, he couldn't make the defense. In fact, he had to forfeit his title shot, but the NWA office allowed Rob Conway to actually fill in for Jax. And that's where we get a new world heavyweight champion in Rob Conway. Now, the important thing to that is the relationship between Rob Conway and Jax Dane. There was already kind of a mentorship in place. Conway was kind of grooming Jax Dane, and Conway wasn't even wrestling really regularly at the time. So for him to, kind of steal that world title, it kind of ignited the NWA in a different direction. In a lot of ways, it was very similar to Nick Aldis winning the NWA World Heavyweight Championship. Now, at this time, Conway and Dane started partnering together. In fact, when Rob Conway made his first defenses in Japan, it was with Bruce Tharp and Jax Dane in his corner. They won the NWA Tag Team titles. They competed in the World Tag League in both 2013 and 2014 for New Japan Pro Wrestling. And during that time, Conway and Dane were stepping in the ring with a lot of Japanese wrestling legends. Kojima, Tenzin, the Bullet Club, Archer, Lance Archer, Hoyt, Davey Boy Smith. The list goes on. And they had won the tag team titles while in Japan in a four-way match, actually beat Davey Boy Smith Jr. and Lance Hoyt, before losing the titles to Kojima and Tenzin. And a lot of great stuff was happening for the NWA around that time, 2013, 2014. Kukushi, I'll get to you guys' comments in a minute, but Kukushi corrected me. It was in Clayton, New Jersey, not Glassboro. Thanks for the update, Kukushi. So that brings us to early 2015. Now Jax Dane is no longer teaming with Rob Conway, is no longer competing in New Japan Pro Wrestling, but he was smashing his way through the National Wrestling Alliance. Got himself a national championship by defeating Lou Marconi. Now that was his first BOD-controlled singles title. So at this point, Jax Dane is a tag team champion for the NWA, and now he holds the national championship. This is where Tim Storm enters the picture. Now, Tim Storm himself was attempting to, reach for that brass ring and become the NWA World's Heavyweight Champion as well. And now his path led him to the North American Championship. But a showdown between the two of them resulted in Jax Dane unifying for a brief time the North American Championship and the National Heavyweight Championship. Now, the rumors of the time were that was going to be it for the national title, that the belts would be forever unified, until Jax Dane was injured. Jax had to forfeit both titles, meaning he gave up his opportunity to challenge for the World Heavyweight Championship. He had to surrender both titles. Tim Storm would go on to win the North American title back. But through the injury, Jax Dane would end up getting a shot at the World's Heavyweight Champion in Hiroshi Tenzan. Now, this match happened on August 29th. So when Jax defeated Tenzin, that was the first time that he won the World Heavyweight Championship. Now, you have to understand, at the time, that's the Grand Slam of the NWA, because, of course, Jax couldn't compete for the Junior Heavyweight title. I don't think Jax could have competed for the Junior Heavyweight title when he was 10 years old, let alone as a full-grown adult. And he wasn't going to be competing for the Women's Championship. So he literally held every single title of any importance for the National Wrestling Alliance back in 2015. Now, Jax would go on to face a lot of great opponents, including Charlie Haas, and even defeated Rob Conway, the former champion, on December 19th, 2015. And that would be at Innovative Pro Wrestling. Back then it was called NWA Smoky Mountain. But then the thorn returned into the side of one Jax Dane. And that would be Tim Storm. Because again, remember, he's the North American champion. And it's his obligation, rather it's his opportunity to challenge for that World's Heavyweight Championship. Now this is kind of unheard of, because these guys, with the NWA, when the NWA was a series of territories and a lot of smaller promotions, feuds and angles were hard to come by. Now we had Chance Prophet and Damian Wayne and Adam Pearce and the Maestro of Wrestling, Adam Pearce and Colt Boom Boom Cabana, Adam Pearce and Brent Albright, Adam Pearce and Blue Demon, but feuds were kind of few and far between that stretched across the end of Tim Storm and Jax Dane was a feud that stretched across the NWA. It wasn't just in Texas, it wasn't just in Tennessee, it was all over the country. In fact, the two met up at the Cauliflower Alley Club on a show presented by Vendetta Pro Wrestling, who then at the time was a member of the NWA. And the title, Jax Dane ended up retaining that title. They would have another match that would result in a no falls counted. It was a disqualification. The match was thrown out. But eventually Tim Storm would win that NWA World's Heavyweight Championship. And that what we thought would close the door on the Tim Storm Jax Dane feud. But it didn't, guys. It didn't. Because last week on NWA Power, Mama Storm came out. Well, it wasn't Mama Storm, obviously. The man who had been portraying Mama Storm came out and reminded Tim Storm of his past. Reminded Tim Storm of his history with Jax Dane. Jax Dane never received a rematch for the World's Heavyweight Championship. Tim Storm was treated as a hero upon the purchase of the NWA by Billy Corgan and Lightning One. He was treated as a hero, and he was elevated to heights never seen in the NWA in probably a decade. But remember, Jax Dane is the guy that carried the ball to get to Tim Storm. And without somebody like Jax Dane, I don't know if the NWA is still as relevant as it is today, or it was 3 years ago. So, on the birthday of Jax Dane, I'd like to say happy birthday, champ. I'd like to wish him the best of luck in his match against Tim Storm. And I really, genuinely hope he gets some sort of deal with the NWA. Now, I know he currently wrestles for Ohio Valley. He was a part of the Crockett Cup last year. And before that, he had competed for Tried and True Pro Wrestling and some of the events that featured the NWA matches. He had been teaming with Crimson as the, what were they called? The War Kings. So we'll see what 2020 has in store for Jax Dane, whether the War Kings will return to the National Wrestling Alliance, whether Jax Dane will have another match in the National Wrestling Alliance. It all remains to be seen. But one of the unsung heroes of the NWA, for certain. So now I'm going to read some of your guys' comments. Roscoe says, "Good day, J. Cal." Roscoe, how you doing, brother? DCam says, "My buddy, I think he's talking about me." And hey, man, what's going on? Roscoe, "I can't miss this. Jax Dane is my current favorite wrestler and one of the reasons I kept watching pro wrestling when I was on the verge of giving up on it." Good news, man. I got you covered. I gave you a pretty good history. Again, go listen to the podcast. It's on anchor.fm. If you're following us on Instagram, the stories are there. I've also put links on Twitter, so you should be able to find it. Roscoe says, 2 NWA legends. Absolutely. I mean, people get offended because they talk about the NWA and they only think about Ric Flair, Harley Race, the Funk Brothers, Gene Kiniski, Lou Thez. But there's a lot of modern day legends for the NWA. Scrap Iron Adam Pearce would be one of them. What Nick Aldis is doing right now I would consider legendary. And what Rob Conway and Jax Dane did in the NWA I think was very significant. I don't know if I'd consider it legendary status, but certainly it helped carry the brand at a time when the NWA needed all the help it could get. Yes, Roscoe, Path of Resistance was the name. Yep. And yes, they were called the Iron Gods. Roscoe, you're doing the research right along with me, aren't you? Don't know much about Lou Marconi. It's hard to find about information. I have him on Facebook, and he looks like a badass. Marconi was a good dude. I mean, let me rephrase that. Marconi was a tough dude, and I know that for him to get that national title wasn't easy, and you could check to see who he fought and who he wrestled. But he was a tough guy, and I think deserved a little bit better from the NWA than what he got. But again, that's the Bruce Tharpe era. A lot of guys didn't get what they should have gotten during that time. The night he injured himself was against Tim Storm, according to DKM. Yeah, okay, I think I knew that, but I don't know if I said that. I was there the night he won the title. DKM, you were the night he won the national title? That's what I'm assuming. I actually saw, Roscoe says, I actually saw Hiroshi Tenzin actually defend the world title against some wrestlers from the U.S. and the NWA, which I thought was cool. Yeah, and he wasn't the only one, guys. When Kojima was champion, he actually came to the United States and wrestled Jeremiah Plunkett for NWA Saw. And that was pretty cool, too. I know when Tenzin came to the States, he did a lot of wrestling in the Southwest region. And, I think that's way cool. When you think about it, these guys, if the biggest wrestling promotion on the planet is the World Wrestling Entertainment, and the second biggest wrestling promotion on the planet is New Japan Pro Wrestling, think about that. That's like if a B-level star in the WWE came to your local indie to wrestle. Like, wouldn't you guys mark out if you saw, like, I don't know, Nakamura show up in your favorite indie wrestling promotion, or Sami Zayn, or Kevin Owens? I mean, some of those guys are actually bigger stars than I'm really admitting to, but, so let's see. Okay. It was cool when Jax Dane defended the title with Jim Cornette in his corner against Charlie Haas with Black Bart. He won when Shelton Benjamin interfered. Roscoe, you're on it, man. You know what you're talking about. Jason says, what's up? What's up, Jason Newsom? Glad you're checking out the show. Tim Storm was badass with the Empire. Yes, he was. Jax Dane went to Ring of Honor for about a week after losing to Tim Storm. Yeah, he cut this amazing promo. And that was one of the critiques of Jax Dane his entire time with the National Wrestling Alliance, is that he didn't cut a lot of promos. He was like, the guy that, carries a big stick and speaks very softly. You didn't really hear many promos from Jax Dane. And then all of a sudden when he gets to Ring of Honor and he's teaming with those two guys, things change quite significantly. Hang on just a second. Sorry about that, guys. Okay, back to comments. My favorite thing about Jax Dane is his nickname of the Vanilla Godzilla. And I could never get that nickname right. I kept calling him everything wrong during that podcast, but that's kind of a hallmark of my character. You can ask Jaden or DKM. I always butcher names. The night he won the world title, I saw Kerry Von Erich and Jax Dane win. Oh, okay, I see what you're saying. That's pretty cool, DK, that you have the distinction of seeing Kerry Von Erich and Jax Dane win the world title. I was in the house when Colt Boom Boom Cabana won his first two titles. I was also in the house when Nick Aldis won the title for a second time. And who knows what happens next for Nick Aldis, but that's neither here nor there. I think either Kojima or Tenzin fought Byron Wilcott. Yeah, and I know if you guys, if you're subscribing to New Japan World, he actually, you could see matches with Jax Dane and Rob Conway and Bruce Tharpe in his silly jackets and big white teeth all over it. There's a lot of good matches and some that's really fun to check out. And for whatever reason, I think we lost one of our video feeds, but that's okay because no one was watching it anyways. What did I think of the night when Jax Dane won the world title? It wasn't a big surprise if you were a fan of the NWA at that time. it felt like that's exactly what they wanted. That's exactly what they were building up to. Again, he unified 2 titles on his path to the world title. It really felt like this was a foregone conclusion that he would be world champion. It was just expected, I think. We didn't know when, we just knew it was coming. And of course, the world title couldn't stay in Japan forever. At some point, they were going to bring the title back home. And I think it was bound to happen, but it could have happened a lot sooner. I thought Bruce Tharpe was great as a heel. You're not the only one. In fact, I know that there was some preliminary discussion. It never happened, but there was preliminary discussion within the NWA that Bruce Tharpe would come back as some sort of character. It never happened, obviously. And I don't know, I don't know who said no. I don't know the details. But I think Bruce Tharpe would have been perfect for the NWA as a heel. Absolutely. Now, I wouldn't put him anywhere near Nick Aldis, but I certainly like partnering him with Jax Dane. That would have been great. There's a lot of guys I would have put with Jax Dane before the guy that they're using now, but that's neither here nor there. Who is your favorite Japanese NWA World Champion? All on this chat answer. I think my favorite would have been Muda or Hashimoto. The reason why I really liked Hashimoto is because that was at a weird time for the NWA when it was kind of those dark days. This was before the Impact deal. And to see him come to Southern California and threaten Samoa Joe or Tom Howard with a world title match, and literally just, he was a mean son of a bitch. And you knew he was a tough dude, you did. But we never got that title match in the United States. And at the time, I was a big fan of 0-1. Samoa Joe, let's be honest, I'm a Samoa Joe fan. So I was watching whatever I could with 0-1, Ring of Honor. I know Samoa Joe went to 0-1 early on. And I ended up going to High Spots and getting buying the tape, like a best of Samoa Joe tape from his time in 0-1 with the Fire Festival matches where he wrestled Taka Michinoku, he wrestled Shinjiro Otani and Masato Tanaka, and of course Hashimoto. So those matches I would very much looked forward to, and was really looking forward to maybe a Samoa Joe versus Hashimoto match for that NWA World's Heavyweight Championship. Never materialized, but they teased it heavily in Southern California for UPW, and UPW was like a minor league development for the WWE at the time when they had Ohio Valley and they were working on like a Deep South wrestling. UPW was like the third, like the rookie league of pro wrestling, and we would get a lot of WWE superstars at this little indie promotion in Santa Ana, California, and that's where they brought in Hashimoto, and it was pretty cool. Just never materialized. One critique of Jax Dane is he's too nice, doesn't try to be a dominant monster, gives people too much to work with instead of squashing them. What do you think? Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I think one of the drawbacks, well, let me tell you my favorite story about Jax Dane, okay? So Jax Dane has been somebody I've admired for quite some time, not only for the way he handled himself in the ring, but the way he handled himself outside of the ring. Your old boy Jay at the time was trying to lose some weight and actually did. And he actually gave me a lot of great advice, literally talked to me on the phone, gave me some great advice on how to cut weight, how to lose weight, and to keep the weight off. And I'd talked to him for years through messaging and all of that, but I never met the guy face to face. There was a lot of opportunities, a lot of times he almost came to Championship Wrestling from Hollywood. Obviously, none of those materialized. The first time I got to meet Jax Dane face to face was at the NWA 70th anniversary show. So I got to see Jax Dane in person, and he smiled really big when he saw me. He saw that my 10 pounds of replica, and he signed it with a big smile on his face. Didn't ask for money, didn't ask for anything. He just very happy to sign the belt. And that made me feel good. He's a good dude. And I always like supporting good dudes. Now, putting him in the ring, absolutely. He should be like the Incredible Hulk in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. He should just smash everybody. And we'll see what happens with his match with Tim Storm, which I think airs next week. I don't really know what's next for him after that, but I hope he sticks around, and I hope he gets built up to be a monster that he should be. Roscoe, I have some bad news to tell you about Cahagas. Lamb says, hey. Roscoe says, wasn't John Cena on UPW? Yeah, UPW was actually responsible for a lot of guys that ended up in the WWE. John Cena, of course, was the most famous one. The Miz really kind of broke through before he got to Ohio Valley. He was there. Some of the other names that you guys might be familiar with, Joey Ryan, Adam Pearce, Chris Masters, Samoa Joe, B-Boy, for some of you guys who are familiar with him. Christopher Daniels was there for a long time. Frankie Kazarian. Not Scorpio Sky, oddly enough. TJ Perkins. And I'm sure there's a lot more that I'm missing out. A lot of guys. Mike Knox, who used to wrestle in the WWE. There's a lot of guys. John Heidenreich, Nathan Jones. All of those guys were discovered by Rick Bassman in UPW. Obviously, their tenure wasn't very long with the WWE, but they had a great track record of getting big dudes their foot in the door. And Lamb points that out. Jax Dane versus Aldis. I would love to see that match. I've actually asked for that match. I don't know if anyone cares, but I've asked for that match for years. Lamb's jumping on it. Yeah. So that's a little bit about our guy Jax Dane, and hopefully someone points him in the right direction so he can see this, so he can see this show and know that he's got a fan base out in the NWA. Of course, I don't have my notes in front of me, but we do have tonight we have Circled Squared, so we don't have NWA POWERRR this evening. So with Circled Squared, we're going to be introduced to quite a few wrestlers that you might not have seen before, and some of them you might know. Now, there's 2 episodes back to back. The first one is going to feature Freya the Slayer. Freya the Slayer is based out of Alaska. Now, good luck trying to find a lot of information about Freya the Slayer, because the Alaskan wrestling scene is not well documented. There's about 3 or 4 different promotions, and you're not going to find results for shows. You're not going to find active rosters. So what I will tell you this. Sorry, I got distracted because Lamb asked a question. Yes, Jake How's View on the podcast. I did tell them about Jax Dane, but certainly feel free to keep posting it anywhere you want to, because definitely like to hear let people know about that one. But Freya the Slayer, again, has had several matches in the Pacific Northwest, in Alaska, the Great North. She's wrestled against, oh goodness, what is her name? I can't think of her name. She used to wrestle in Impact. She used to be in the WWE. Oh my God, I can't think of her name. It's going to drive me nuts. Oh well. And I believe Freya the Slayer has been wrestling since about 2017. Again, I can't find a lot of results. If you guys can, go ahead and let me know. But she does compete for a promotion called the 49th State Wrestling, which I think is a pretty cool name. They have a YouTube channel if you search the 49th State. And they do have videos, some of the matches containing Freya the Slayer. So if you check that out after this show, it might be worth checking out. Not cheerleader Melissa Lamb. It was, I can't think of her name. She used to work with the Pirate Wrestler, if that helps anybody at all. I think it was Winter, maybe. I just can't think of her name. Sorry. Back to your comments, Willie Bowen says Thunder Rosa versus Camille would be a good match. I don't want to see that match yet. I think that match should wait. Camille is going to be a very interesting character in the women's division of NWA Power. I don't think we need to rush this. I want to see a feud with Sienna and Camille while Thunder Rosa continues to have successful defenses of the world title. I think that'd be a better way to build it up. The next wrestler would be Danny Jordan. In fact, if you guys excuse me, I'm going to grab my notes. Hold on. That's pretty good. Pretty good guess, memorization of what notes I took today. Yes, Lamb. Oh, Winter in TNA. I believe that was her name. So yeah, Freya the Slaya, she works for the 49th State Wrestling Pro Alaska, NSA Wrestling, which I think is Northside Alaska Wrestling. And she's been around since 2017, so she's been at it for at least 3 years. Next up, we have Danny Jordan, who she's from Atlanta, so she's a local girl. She was trained by A.R. Fox and made her debut back in 2017 as well. So these two ladies have been in the business for about 3 years competing. So it'll be interesting what we see from them. I believe the NWA needs more women wrestling anyways. So this is another example of when I think, man, it would be nice if, depending on how good they are, obviously, because I haven't seen their wrestling in the ring, but if they're confident and comfortable in the ring, I think they'd be a welcome addition. Freya the Slaya certainly has an interesting look. Kind of have a crush on her now, so I certainly hope she sticks around. We'll see. And then also, we have Lamb. Yes, Lamb, you were correct. Catherine Waters, you were correct. Thank you. Goodness gracious. Then we have Colby Corino, who is the son of a former NWA World's Heavyweight Champion, Steve Corino. Colby's life has been kind of chaotic. He first stepped into a pro ring in 2001, which would have made him the tender age of 4. Of course, they talked about, and they'll go into detail about his arrest for heroin. I think at the time that happened, he was slated to be going to New Japan Pro Wrestling. And of course, this was also not too far away from Reed Flair's accidental overdose on heroin. So it kind of was a dark time for second generation wrestlers. It seems that Colby has got his life together. It seems that maybe things will be better for him. Personally, I hope it is. We see a lot of second generation wrestlers never materialize. Richie Steamboat, Reed Flair, Colby Corino seemed to be like he might have been one of them, but apparently he's got his life back on track. So I'm kind of pulling for the kid, and he faces George South, 57-year-old George South. I shouldn't say negative things about 57-year-old people. At least he's not 67 or 64. At least it's not the Rock and Roll Express. And the thing about George South is, you guys might not know this, he wrestles every week, all the time. I mean, he's still wrestling. He's a 2-time AML champion. American, I'm not even sure what AML stands for, but I know they're pretty big on the East Coast. He's been wrestling regularly since 1981. He's held 10 times the PWF Tag Team Championships. He's a 10-time EWA champion. So, I mean, he's a guy that's been around for a long time. Now, I'm all about people getting opportunity. We look at a guy like Tim Storm, who he really didn't hit his mark until his late 40s. Blue Demon Jr. also really, I mean, he didn't win the NWA World title until his mid-40s either. So I don't want to discredit anybody who's in a more advanced age if they can still go. So we'll see what Mr. George South brings to the table tonight. But personally, I'm really hoping to see the NWA benefit from all of these guys. I mean, we go back to the Circled Square from, I think it was 2 weeks ago. Both tag teams, Hawk Airy and the Best Kept Secret in Wrestling, both of those teams would make an excellent addition to the NWA. And this is a situation where both on the female side, Freya the Slaya and Danny Jordan, I think depending on their actual ability, if they've got any bit of juice at all, I think you gotta lock them up. And Colby Corino, I mean, certainly has the legacy connected to his father. It certainly would be an interesting story to see the 23-year-old man enter the NWA as a virtual unknown and see what he can do with that, or George South make the best of the remaining years he has in the ring. But we'll see. I mean, you guys, what are your thoughts? I'm going to read some of your comments right now. Okay. That was... Roscoe says that was the one that was going to get an incest angle in WWE's ECW with Burchill. Yes. Yes. How do I say that with a straight face? Yes. Incest. Oh, God, don't screen cap that. Willie Bowen says, Phil Shatter should return to the NWA Pro Wrestling. And then Roscoe is quick to point out that Shatter's killing it in NXT. And I think his name is Jackson Riker or something along those lines. Shatter was pretty cool, man. I got to admit, I thought he was going to be a world champion. I really think they dropped the ball with that. In a lot of ways, Jax Dane and Phil Shatter kind of remind me of each other. You kind of always thought that they would be world champion. And the fact that Shatter never got that opportunity seems like a missed opportunity. You know, I'd rather have one less Sheik and one more Shatter, if you know what I mean. Roscoe says, I think Colby Carino versus George South isn't fair. Who would vote for South other than me? It's like the rock and roll. No one is going to vote for older wrestlers over younger, in my opinion. Not necessarily, man. It just depends on the showing. I mean, if George South goes out there and kills it, why wouldn't you vote for him? Kikuchi says, I saw Kobe wrestle at 14. Yeah, I remember that too. And he's been around for a while. I think he even wrestled for Dangerous Adrenaline Wrestling Gladiators, as I previously mentioned. A friend of the show, the promotion as a whole is a friend of the show. And I think he actually made a few appearances there. I'm sure someone can correct me with that. George South fought Great Muta recently at WrestleCade. Yeah, there you go. Got that. C.W. Anderson is CWL champion. Correction, AWL champion. Yeah, they actually traded the titles back and forth. Sorry, guys. Nick Bockwinkel in his prime was in his 40s and was amazing into his 50s. Absolutely. If you guys haven't seen Nick Bockwinkel wrestle or don't know who we're talking about, you're doing yourselves a disservice by not checking that out. Go onto YouTube as soon as this is over, or as soon as Circled Squared is over, whatever. Check out Nick Bockwinkel. That's one of my favorites. I know it's one of Adam Pearce's favorites too. The analogy was you ask him what time it was, and he'd tell you how to build a watch. Not only would he tell you how to build the watch, but you'd be on the edge of your seat listening to how to build a watch. Let's see. I hope they announce who won last week. I don't know what is happening with the voting. I don't think that they're going to announce the voting. I think it's going to be something they hold close to the chest so that they can continue the angle after April. And I don't think we'll have a defined answer of who makes it and who doesn't. Dose of Reality 420, welcome back. He says, I have seen George South in the NWA also fighting C.W. Anderson. Mr. South would be better for manager. Yeah, maybe. Jay, who do you want to see in Circle Squared? I'll tell you. There's several guys, and they all come from Championship Wrestling from Hollywood. I've said this before, but right off the top of my bag, or however the expression is, Ryan Taylor. I think Ryan Taylor is one of the best pro wrestlers today. Better than anybody you guys can name. Anybody. It's a shame that he's not signed somewhere, and as Lamb might know, he's been wrestling for WXW for the 16-carat tournament in the last couple of weeks. He's been living in Germany. He's a guy that's trained with the Kind Tai Dojo. He's been to Japan. He's been to Germany. He held the Heritage Championship. Back then it was the NWA Heritage title, which was held before him with guys like Adam Pearce and TJ Perkins. Ryan Taylor is the real deal, and the fact that he's not signed just blows my mind. And one of the nicest guys you can meet too, so I always wish for nothing but success with him. I also really like Watts, who is the current Hollywood Heritage Champion for Championship Wrestling from Hollywood. I think he's got a lot left to prove. He was a lot of people know him from his time on the WWE Tough Enough show when they rebooted it. I think he was the guy that didn't run the ropes right or something, but he is such a great athlete, and being able to hang out with him in China, I could tell you he's a good dude as well, and I'd love to see his opportunities open up for him as well. And these guys are virtual unknowns outside of Southern California, but I think the greater wrestling community deserves to see them. And then also the Wolf Zandies, which is Che Cabrera and Bad Dude Tito. Again, if you're familiar with Championship Wrestling from Hollywood, you know who these guys are. They're working as a tag team. They have a great look. They're brutal in the ring. I think they would fit perfectly for the NWA's tag team division. Okay, so now that's off my chest. Woodland Goblin says, not entirely true. If you're a wrestling legend with a big fan base like the Rock and Roll Express, you're going to root for them every time over the younger guys, unless you're diehard of the younger dude. Well, I mean, we'll see. I always believe it's like, look, what I see in front of me is what I'm going to vote for. I wasn't pre-invested in really the world's best kept secret, whatever that tag team was, Tyson Dean and Lewis, and they impressed me. I thought they were really good. So I don't know if George South has a massive following. Maybe not. Kikuchi says, I saw Shatter face Adam Pearce and against Chance Prophet live. Yeah, and Shatter was great. Don't get me wrong. Chance Prophet's great. Chance Prophet's another guy I'd like to see get an opportunity with the NWA, but we'll see if that ever happens. Shatter was good in TNA as Gunner. I saw a little bit of it. Yeah. Dose of Reality says Carino and HC Locke are regular on Capital Wrestling. You mentioned that HC Locke last time. I need to look into them because I still haven't done it. Off the top of my head. Thanks, Kikuchi. Lamb says, got a lot of great reviews by German fellows on his excursion right now, and that would be Ryan Taylor. Roscoe, Steve Carino is a legend. Steve Carino got destroyed by Hashimoto and came back looking for more. Steve Carino, I think, really, again, we talk about these dark times of the NWA. When you got Mike Rapata running around with the NWA World Title, or Gary Steele, and then you get somebody like Steve Carino, it's definitely a step in the right direction. That was coming off of his ECW Heavyweight Championship run. So I think it was beneficial for the NWA to use him. And personally, I think I kind of wish the NWA had done more with Corino post that defense. I mean, there was times where he would have made a perfect foil for Scrap Iron Adam Pearce. He could have feuded with Blue Demon. I mean, there's so much things they could have done with him had they tried to. I guess, I don't know. Willie Bowen says, Watts from Championship Wrestling from Hollywood should be in Circle Squared. I agree, Willie. Woodland Goblin says Adrian Quest should definitely someday in the NWA. Yes, Woodland Goblin. I love Adrian Quest as well. I kind of wish that the NWA did have a junior heavyweight division, because Adrian Quest would be perfect for it, along with guys like, Ray Rosas. That's just in Hollywood, but I mean, there's a lot of guys out there, and they've already got, Caleb Conley. They've got Ricky Starks, and there's a few other guys that are on the bubble that I think would work as junior heavyweights for the NWA. Roscoe said Bad Dude Tito looked good against Aldis. Absolutely. Bad Dude Tito kind of carried Hollywood for a couple of months, maybe even a couple of years. A year. He kind of carried it when a lot of the stars left the Championship Wrestling from Hollywood to go on to bigger and better things. Bad Dude Tito was there kind of still carrying the brand, so he's definitely a guy that I think very highly of. NAWA is North American Wrestling Alliance. Okay. Whatever happened to Jerry Flynn? Willie, I don't know, man. If you like, I could try to do a deep dive on it, but I don't know. Mike Rapata is wrestling in USA Championship Wrestling's weekly YouTube show. So, Mike Rapata actually was responsible for training a handful of talents in Southern California. He was out here for a while and helped to train guys like Anchors Away, SoCal Crazy, Lord Kura, and there's a few other that I'm probably missing. But Rapata's presence is still felt today in the world of professional wrestling. I'm surprised he's still wrestling, but not shocked. J. Cal, do you think Jax Dane will win the innovative Smoky Mountain Cup? I do not think he will win. Now, I think he's the best guy in the tournament, but I know that, Tony Givens has to kind of also promote his brand. So it's good to bring in guys like Jax Dane who bring legitimacy to the tournament. He's a guy that's been in it before, along with Chase Owens and Jason Kincaid. But I believe if it's not Chase Owens that wins the whole thing, it's going to be somebody on that Innovative Pro Wrestling roster. They need all the help that they can get. They're trying to establish that brand. And I know they were on a hiatus, so this show is going to be very important to kind of set the stage going forward for the for Innovative Pro Wrestling. Man, guys, we did a lot of talking today, and I didn't even drink any water. But again, I appreciate you guys hanging out with me for the last hour or so. We're gonna wrap it up here because I know it's just 5 minutes until the Circled Squared comes to the NWA YouTube channel. Make sure you go watch that. Watch it so we can talk about it next week and see who you guys want to vote for. Maybe we could all pull our resources together and become one single voice for the Alliance, for who we think should win Circled Squared. Just a thought. Roscoe, Ricky Morton's son. I wouldn't be surprised. But let's wrap it up here, guys. Again, please, if you like the show, give us a thumbs up, subscribe. Tell your friends about it. Share it on your favorite social media page. If you think we do a good job of representing the National Wrestling Alliance for their pre-show, there are other people who do a podcast before the NWA TV show, but we think we are the best. We are the best. And 175 of you have subscribed already, so if you guys want to keep subscribing and have your friends subscribe, I'd greatly appreciate it. We're trying to grow the show more and more each week, and then we should be returning soon with the Alliance Guys podcast, which does the recap of NWA Power and Circled Squared. That should be coming back soon too. And of course, please check out our social medias, the TheAllianceBlog, all across the board. And please visit alliance-wrestling.com. I wrote a really great article about Dan the Beast Severin that I think you guys would enjoy. I wrote about Mike Searcy a few weeks ago. If you guys don't know who he is, I think it's worth taking into consideration what he did for the brand. And also, check out the podcast. We did put up the podcast earlier today with Jax Dane from 2013. It's from the vault. I hope you guys will listen, enjoy it, and check it out. And, well, that's our time. So until next time, we'll see you guys at the matches. Oh, by the way, I'll be at Crockett Cup. If you are coming, come say hi. We'll talk about it later.